Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And today I am going to be offering my interpretation of how a trauma bond is formed. Now, there are a lot of videos out there discussing the trauma bond, maybe some even discussing this spiritual tie. What do we call it? Well, a soulmate, right? And there's a difference between a life partner and a soulmate, and I'll get to that in another video. Because it's not what a lot of us think. And this soulmate comes in. This soulmate comes in to basically challenge you. The soulmate challenges us on so many levels, on every level. And sometimes an abuser can come in your life and you kind of will bear that cross, like the story of Christ, before you find your victory. Victory meaning your true self, before you're able to accept your true self and create strong boundaries and know who you are. But that trauma bond stems from something, and in this particular audio, I'm going to discuss my interpretation of it. I have a whole nother perspective, and maybe someone has thought of this or talked about this, and I just didn't run into that video yet. But yeah, let's get into it. Welcome back, guys. So we know that trauma bonding is a manipulation by a narcissistic partner, right? And it's created to reinforce these cycles of abuse, these things that we go through. And in narcissistic abuse, that cycle is the love bombing cycle, and then we move into the devaluation stage or phases, down to the discard, and then we go back into the hoovering, right? So the narcissist can pull you back in. And it's our belief that the trauma bond is strengthened and reinforced by how many times we re-enter into this cycle, right? And this is true. This is true that a trauma bond is strengthened and reinforced as we go through this cycle repeatedly over and over again. I think I read a statistic at one time that says most people, well, at least in a physically abusive relationship, run through the relationship on average of 7 times before they get out. And I don't have the exact percentages or numbers on those people who actually don't get out. You know, they run those cycles and they die. Two different young black women died close to my community over the last month. And I also lost my mother that way, as you guys know. But I want to say that the trauma bond itself is formed in dynamics where the power shift is not parallel, where the power between two individuals or two communities or, you know, two countries or just whatever it is, where one person is able to exert more power than another, and then the other person is sort of relying on the other person. And original trauma bonds that are formed in childhood is for this reason, because a child, you know, when we were children, we really didn't have the power, right? We have to grow into our power. We have to learn our power. And a lot of times, if you grew up in an emotionally, psychologically, spiritually abusive home, even if there was no physical abuse or very little physical abuse, this powerlessness can sit in our spirits even when we're old enough to exert a decent or, you know, manage a reasonable amount of power within our own lives. But when children are not respected or, you know, given authority over their lives as they should have, you know, certain amount of authority as they go along, you know, more and more authority and respect being released and honored to children, you know, age appropriately, then what happens is by the time we're adults, we're so used to this loss of power that we start to subconsciously operate from that that spirit of lack. And so I would like to say that the trauma bond happens or is able to be born or come to life when there is an unfair, when one side is at a disadvantage from the other, when there is an unfair or disproportionate distribution, I don't know why I'm fumbling, it could be my braces, distribution of power in a relationship dynamic. And I say this because even when I think of myself, when I was with this physical abuser, not only did he have a lot more money, he had a lot more influence. And so in my mind, at that time, growing up the way I grew up and not having the information that I need to be empowered, this person was more powerful than me. And so I had to listen to him, or I had to be available to him despite what I was feeling, despite my own life, despite my own misery, despite the fact that what I wanted, my needs were not being met, right? Because my needs were not being met as a child. So I just want to remind you that a trauma bond can happen in situations where a person is using their power unfairly. And this is because when a person appears to have a lot of power to another person, that person is going to hold or idolize or hold this person with all this power up. And sometimes they will continue to do so even when that person is hurting them or undermining them. And who better to teach us to be this way than the people who first had care of us, our guardians, right? That's why I keep going back to that. So trauma bonds are formed in this dynamic. I believe that they are reinforced through the punishment and reward portion of these relationships. So basically the devaluation stage. So if you meet a person and this person is, kind of overwhelming you with love and admiration, and a lot of times like these 50 Shades of Grey type of movies, there was one that I saw years ago called 9.5 Weeks. And in 9.5 Weeks, this narcissistic male, I believe it was Mickey Rourke, was really into Kim Basinger. She was beautiful, and they had this sexual, really intense relationship. And this intensity, this really fast, speedy intensity, this intense nature, instinct that can be instinctual between some human beings, is kind of like that fire that ignites, that has the potential to ignite the trauma bond when this idolization phase breaks, when it stops, when the narcissist decides for whatever reason, and I'll go over a reason why they feel that they don't need to idolize you or make you feel good anymore or cater to your needs or, have all this great sex with you, every day. Because initially, when you first get into these situations with these narcissistic people, and I'm just going to stick to the intimate relationship part right now, but this could apply to friendships and relationships at work with the boss or a co-worker as well. They just love bomb you in a different way, but the same feel-good emotions and hormones are being executed through your body while this person is holding you up, making you feel like you're the center of the universe. And so in these narcissistic relationships, you're bombarded. All of those gaps, all of those holes, whatever doubts you had about yourself, here it is, some total stranger, or even if it's someone that you thought you knew, is now telling you that there's nothing wrong with you. Everything is right about you. You're perfect. You're perfect, and you are my soulmate. It is you who I've always been looking for. And meanwhile, you may have issues with your weight, or you may have issues with the way that you look. This person might not know it, but you might not be absolutely happy with yourself. Or maybe you might think that you're happy with yourself, but on the subconscious level, there's a part of yourself that you're not fully connected with, that is not completely satisfied with yourself. And this is the thing about self-love. I believe that if we were not, loved properly at home and nurtured properly when we grew up, we will have a self-love deficit. And sometimes even when you are nurtured properly at home in this mean and raggedy society and the way people treat one another, you still could develop a deficit about who you are and not fully accept yourself. But here comes the narcissistic person. The narcissistic person does not cater to our souls or our spirits on the spiritual level, because he can't or she can't, because she's not connected at the soul level. The narcissist is all ego. And so the narcissist caters to your ego. And this is why the trauma bond can be effective and why it hurts so much. Because it's at the ego. It's not at the soul. It's not at the true self. It's not at the spirit. It's not at the invisible you. It's at the ego. The narcissist is usually tackling these external things, right? And then you're taking this as, truth, as love, as word, as gold. And so the narcissist puts you into a trance, puts you into a different state, a whole nother reality. This is the narcissist's way of sneaking you into his reality or her reality. Because this love bombing, it feels so good, because you can go from, feeling like you are not having anybody, or you're just going about your life, and then suddenly somebody is just completely adoring you, wanting to do everything for you, putting themselves in every area of your life. These are red flags as well too, so take note. But they're placing themselves, they're finding a way to place and put themselves in every aspect and every part of your life. This person can become your mechanic, or she can suddenly become the person that's making all of your dinners. She's ironing your clothes. This is love bombing. And normal people don't do this. This is love bombing. This person is throwing themselves at you. They're filling in all of the cracks, all of the holes that you may not have known that you had. And let's just say this narcissistic person starts to slack, because narcissists can't maintain or uphold this love bombing stage, because it's not authentic. It's a form of idolization. They're idolizing you, which is unrealistic. Anytime someone puts you on a pedestal, they can kick it down, because we don't belong on pedestals. And especially we don't belong on pedestals initially, as soon as we meet people. We should be wary of that. And so once the narcissist fills in all of those holes, he's plugged in all of that lack, all of that self-doubt, all of those insecurities have now been plugged in by another person. Technically, the target is now validated without even knowing it. It's so slick and sly how it happens. But now you have been validated by another person, which is absolutely against any practice of self-love, because all of our validation has to come from self. So now the narcissist has found a way to validate you, and the narcissist knows that you have fell for this false validation, that you have slipped into his reality, right? You're like a little teddy bear, cubby, you're right under the arm or under the breast of this woman. All of this love, it feels so good. Especially those of us who may have had times in our lives where we were lacking love, even for ourselves. And then when the narcissist does something that you feel as strange or peculiar, and even if you said it in a nice way or a peculiar way, whatever it is that turns a narcissist against you, which is always predictable, because this is what they're going to do. It's a part of their disorder. They can't help it, right? And you might say, what took you so long to come back? I thought you were coming right back. Or, oh, what's going on with this? I thought you said you lived here. Or, where's your car? You said you had a car, but we're always in my car. Anything that would be a risk at shattering the narcissist's false, idealized version of him or herself that they've been showing you through this love bombing creates the potential for the narcissist to turn on you. We know that the narcissist is already going to turn. So we don't want to pass the blame to the target. This is inevitable. This has to happen. This is a part of the disorder. Even if you don't do anything wrong, at some point the narcissist will get bored and find something wrong, because remember, they're working with the empty spirit. They're not processing their traumas and emotions. They gave up their true self. They pushed their true self way back, where at this point it's unattainable. They can't even reach the true self. They believe in this false idolized self. It's too painful to go back, right? So the narcissist is eventually going to find something wrong with you, or something wrong with what you said, or something you did was just not good enough. This is just how they are. They're going to nitpick. They have to find something wrong with you, because deep down on the subconscious level, they know that something's wrong with them. But before you get to find out, or try to see, or try to dig, they're going to pull the carpet up from under you. And they do this in a number of ways that I'm not going to get in on this particular video. But here is where the trauma bond actually sticks, because we were not made to go from love to disappointment at such a quick and swift speed. And this is what the narcissist does. It's almost like literally being kicked off a pedestal. I mean, I'm talking about one that's 20 feet high, kicked and hitting the ground emotionally. And so the narcissist will start to disappoint, whatever that disappointment might be. Maybe they will not arrive so frequently. Maybe their call patterns will change drastically. You know, maybe you will learn something through a text. Maybe you will learn that there's someone else, but something is going to happen. And instead of the narcissist trying to comfort you or let you know that things are okay, the narcissist is going to blame you, right? And then now you're shocked, because all you can think about is the love. All you can think about is all the power that you just allowed this person to have over you, right? And so you're just trying to get this person to exert some of that power back on you. You just need to be validated again. And this is what happens when we let people take too much control over us, people that we don't really know. When we allow people to validate us and come in and make us feel good. This is something that we must do on our own. And we must be aware that this trickery and deception is happening at an all-time high. That these narcissistic people are behaving this way for narcissistic supply. And so this person who was just showing you all this love and all this admiration, you've actually, in essence, without knowing, you've actually given that person authority over the way that you feel. Now you need this person to see you the same way, and you will begin to do things to try to get that person to act the way they were acting originally. And this is when the narcissist knows that they have you in their seduction trap. And I think this is the type of unconscious sin that we commit that make us vulnerable for this type of demonic expression to slip into our lives. Because we're not supposed to be seduced on this level, not in this way. And so now this trauma bond is formed because the pain is there. You can feel it. Trauma bonds are painful. In my narcissistic trauma bond part 2, I go over that. But this is how the narcissistic trauma bond is formed. It's just a repeat of the initial trauma bond that was not healed from childhood. 9 times out of 10, we were traumatically injured by someone else who had some type of authority over our lives when we weren't able to have that authority. And so we go through life giving up that authority. We go through life waiting for other people to tell us we're good enough. We go through life waiting for other people to love us, waiting for other people to let us know we are lovable. And then when someone shows up and gives us those things, we become very, very happy and pleased. It's like we're walking on air. But this is a setup. This can really, really, really hurt a person. And this is why it's important that we work on the parts of ourselves that we know we are lacking in. We have to be able to fill those holes so that we can identify it. And even if we don't get to fill all of the holes, we have to be adamant about not letting another person fill those holes for us. We have to be skeptical initially. I've heard of a person who was with a person for 1 year and didn't realize that it was a narcissist until then. He didn't start to show signs of narcissism, and the mask didn't slip for a year. And I was dumbfounded by that information, because generally we like to believe that we will know within a couple of weeks or at least 3 months. And so this is, we have to be careful, and we have to do our research, and we have to pay attention to wording and language, and pay attention to what people say and if it matches up with what they do. And we need to be doing that before we release our love, before we release our commitment and loyalty and admiration, because this is how trauma bonds are formed. And one thing about a trauma bond is, once it's formed, if you're not knowledgeable about it, you can go deeper into it, and then it can become a repeat cycle. Because remember, narcissists know that they cannot continue to devalue you. At some point, they have to reward you and give you some good treatment, like how people do dogs. Because they know that by giving you this good treatment, they can reinforce those good feelings. They can re-inspire those loving feelings and get your attention back on them, so they can hurt you a little bit more. And so, that's what I wanted to share about the trauma bond. It's heavy. It's heavy, and it's complex, and it's written out, and it's I thoroughly explain it in the You Can't Hurt Me No More Self-Love Kit for Empaths Who Love Too Hard, in the 79-page PDF that I created. It can really help heal that trauma and bring a higher awareness and understanding to why this trauma happened. And all of us can work on being our own healers. We're born natural healers. God made us healers. And if you like this video and this video resonated with you, please prove it by pressing like. If you think someone else could benefit from hearing this trauma bond video, please share it. Don't forget to hit the bell notification so you can be notified immediately when I launch a new episode. And if you subscribe to my channel, thank you. I appreciate you. And if you haven't yet subscribed, consider subscribing and having a look at some of the links I put in the description box that will lead you to some of my other videos.